So I'm just in the process of getting myself ready for work. And I had all these thoughts that, was going through my head. And I just wanted to get them out because, again, I'm kind of going through something. And I was thinking so many different things, like in regards to what's truth when it comes to the Bible, me and my life, and what it is that I've gone through or what I'm going through, my mom, and I feel like, as black people, damn, I don't even want to say it like that, but kind of, we get this thing embedded in us about believing in God, believing in God, believing in God. But we're taught to believe in this God that we're not supposed to question, because there's all these different contradictions in the Bible. And this is what I started wondering. Why are there two creation stories in Genesis? The first one wasn't good enough, but we're not supposed to question why God does what he does. I remember, and I also used to wonder, why do they only talk about Jesus' life from the time that he was born, barely up to the time that he was like, what, 12, 11 or 12, something like that? And then he like flees the scene. There's no talk of him until he comes back. And when he comes back, he's 30. He's like around 30 years old. And then he dies when he's about 33. But why is it that there's no talk of him and he comes back and he so-called has all these powers or whatever? And, it's said that, the reason why he's got all these so-called powers is because he's the son of God. But guess what? I'm supposed to be a son of God too, because the word says that we're created in his image. What makes Jesus any different than me? He was a man. You're not going to tell me, and again, this is one of those so-called things we're not supposed to question when it comes to the Bible and religion. Why is it that he can be born of a woman and be the son of God? It tells us that we too are God and God is in us, but we're not supposed to be looked at as being the same or to be special like him. And then why is he worshipped when he never said to worship him? But so many people want to be, in Jesus' name, and don't even understand the reason why after a prayer they say amen, and that they're giving praise to the God, sun God, Amen-Ra. People don't look deeper into the Bible. They just believe it, and it's like, why do we have to blindly believe and accept what the Bible says? Why aren't we allowed to question anything? I don't think that that's right, to just blindly, because if you look at it like this, if you met a person on the street that you did not know and they just said to believe them, take their word for it, you're not going to question them at all about anything they say when it, comes to say, like, if they Like, what if this person was the ultimate scam artist, but they're telling you to believe them? You know, give me your bank account number. Why? You're not supposed. Don't question me. Just do it. Just trust me. Just trust me. This is what people have been taught to do. This is what people have been taught to do, to just blindly believe and follow and not question. And I feel like we were born intelligent beings. I remember, and this is just what I was thinking while sitting here doing my hair. I remember this guy that I guess I'm no longer friends with him because I've been out of touch with him for so long. And his name is Kevin Malone. We were really good friends. We were, and he lived when I was 15. He lived across the street from where we lived, and he worked with my mom. And there would be times I'd be sitting on my steps, and he would come over because he knew that we, went to church and stuff. And we would have talks, and he would always ask me things about the Bible, things that I didn't have answers to, the questions. But I remember him asking a question about, what's going on with the books of the Bible. Did you realize there's books of the Bible that are missing? And then we started talking about the life of Jesus and his disappearance and why there are all these gaps. And I was a studier. I wasn't somebody at that age that just went along with everything. I was really, really into looking into the Bible. And he brought up the book of Eli. And it was a couple other books, but he was saying how he read the book of Eli, and it talked about some things that actually, and it was one of those books of the Bible that he said was not added into the Bible. He's like, why wasn't that book added in there? He said there was a lot of books that did not make it in the Bible, and I just don't understand that, because why would God allow certain books to be put in there and certain other ones not to? And he just really, really, I used to like having conversations with him because he made me think. He really, really made me think. And, he talked about the whole thing of, why can't we question God? Which I wondered, and I used to ask my mom that too. Like, when I had questions, she didn't know. She just told me, well, you're not supposed to question God. That's like telling a kid that they're not supposed to question their parents. And the parents just, blindly leading their kid or telling them, just do what I say. And I just don't agree with that. I just feel like there's something wrong with that. Because if my parent is doing something wrong or something that I don't like or I don't care for, you mean to tell me that really I'm not allowed to ask a question? I'm not allowed to ask a question? And at some point, you grow up from being a kid to an adult. And you should be allowed to ask questions and know certain things, because when you're in school, they tell you, oh, you make sure that you ask the questions if you don't know. But then other situations, you're not allowed to question or ask anything. You're just blindly supposed to go along with whatever it is that you're told. That's some BS. That's some real bullshit. I don't agree with it. I don't subscribe to it. I feel like it's wrong. And part of me wishes that I didn't raise my kids in the church. I'm grateful for the experience of it because I get to see two sides of something, you know. But I really wish that I would have been more vocal and opened my mouth more when it came to certain things, and not just been this get along kid. I did a lot though, but I didn't look into the book of Eli because it wasn't part of the Bible, and I felt like I would get in trouble. Maybe. Because then another part of me doesn't understand why. I mean, I guess at that time, maybe I didn't see any real validity in it because it wasn't part of the Bible, and I had already been, I guess, somewhat brainwashed. But it always made me curious, you know. I always thought about it. But, I just don't agree with not being able to ask questions when it comes to the Bible. I think there's so much that is missed, and so much that people just tend to go along with, because for the most part, most people are followers. They're not studiers at all. They're not. The average person does not really study. They just do what the pastor say because, you know, it is easier to allow someone else to be accountable for whatever it is that you do, your mistakes or whatever. It's just easier. You can blame it on someone else, like Adam did with Eve. But because of my current situation, I just kind of wondered about this so-called God that's supposed to care, but allows us to suffer and go through so much. Why is that? I'm trying to get ready for work. I gotta, I guess, bring this over. Anyway. I need to wash my hands. You know, I just, there's just so much I don't agree with when it comes to the Bible. Oh my gosh, my hair is not right. It don't feel right. Inside. But yeah, there's just a lot of things that I tend to be curious about, and this kind of set me like on this whole thing, you know, really wondering, because I started going through this change, and when I think that I'd always been curious and I'd always been a studier, but I felt that the religion that I was in as a Seventh-day Adventist was it. I really thought that it was it, that I had actually hit that that religion, but I also always said that no religion has complete hold over me. No religion. And I definitely meant that. Oh, why is this light over here so freaking bright? It's just not the best light. I don't want to use that light. It's so freaking bright. Let me get myself together. Hold on. And I always felt like if there was some other religion out there or thing that had more truth, that's what I was going to honor. So once I got to the point in church where I was giving sermons because I was on the board, now I'm in a position where I'm really, really trying to be on point with everything that I'm talking about. Basically, really trying to make sure that I'm leading people in the right way, because I take that stuff very seriously, very seriously. And I'm not going to be responsible for leading anybody's soul down the wrong path, or I should say, misleading anyone the wrong way. And I would always say to people, you guys have the ability to be able to get the same information like I do and study. You know, the Bible never said that we're supposed to read it. It said we're supposed to study to show thyself approved. And again, there were so many contradictions in the Bible, but when I gave a sermon, I always tried to give a sermon that was different, that was very well informed. And even my brother would always say, you know, when he would hear me talk, he would say, I've never heard that message on that topic given that way before. Okay. Yet and still, I understand everybody is not the same. And I feel like for some people, that if they were to let go of their religion, they would feel so empty they would not know what to do, because they got it so ingrained in who they are that they actually have it as, you know, it really becomes their identity. And there's also other things that I've learned to take into consideration too, about how some things are just not meant for everyone. And we all have different life paths and purposes of why, you know, we're here, and what our personal purpose is, because we all have different lessons that we need to learn in life. So, because now I'm on the board and I'm doing all this studying, again, really trying to get into things, I came across this guy named Jordan Mel, and he talks about understanding the words in the Bible, etymology, and I really started getting into etymology. And that helped me to decipher certain things. And he would talk about things with the Bible too. But I liked the way that he talked about it, because he's like, you know, this is one of the ways that you are not misled when you see the beginning of something. Understand where the origin of these words come from. Now, mind you, I'm not somebody that's able to speak in the original language of these, you know, I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I was thinking that it was not recording. I don't know. Anyway, um, I, I feel like it helped as far as understanding where the beginning of things, where things come from. You know what I mean? So I started really getting into looking up the beginning of them, so I had an understanding of them. And so again, I wanted to be very thorough, you know, and be on point with whatever it was that I talked about. So I'm looking up words, and I had to do a sermon about Christmas. Oh boy. When I tell you, I got so much contradiction, backlash in a sense when it came to the sermon that I did. And the thing that was most hurtful with it is that after I gave my sermon, this one other person in church, I believe, Helen, got up to do her conversation or whatever it was that she was doing, and said that, you know, she was actually going to give the truth, the real truth about Christmas. Because honestly, nobody wanted to hear what I had to say, because I was definitely giving them the truth and telling them what it was all about, where it came from, that understanding how we were no better in our way of doing things than the first day church, Sunday church, because we talked about how to be different and not do the same things. But here we are with a tree inside our church vestibule, you know, so-called honoring and worshiping the same way, and how there really is no Christ that should be part of Christmas, because we know that Christ was born during a more of like a spring type of time. But yet and still, we want to put him, you know, make Christmas all about Christ. And so they just got upset. They didn't care for what I did. And I'm just like, whatever, you know, whatever. I didn't like that they were going back against what I said, because they didn't want to look bad. It was misleading for those that honestly wanted the truth. And to me, it was even a bit hurtful, because now you're making me look like I'm the liar. I didn't care for that. You know, sit up here and make me look like I'm a fucking liar when y'all asses don't really study and you're going along with the status quo of what everybody else in here is doing. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of knew from that point that even when I did that sermon, I already kind of knew that I was not going to be continuing to go to church, because I didn't believe the same way in the same things anymore. My views were changing. My beliefs were changing. And I was not going to be a part of an organization that believed differently than how I believed. I didn't want to raise my kids that way anymore. I just didn't want to do it. So I feel like that's when shit started to get just change and get real. I was no longer asked to speak at church anymore, which I already knew was going to happen. I did not care. I completely did not care. I was prepared for it. Also, me and my kids were kind of ostracized. You know, people were talking and not in the best way. But my point is, as I was studying and I was getting into Jordan Maxwell's things, I came across this other man called Billy Carson. Not called, named Billy Carson. He then, the things that he talked about really opened my eyes, because he talked about these other books of the Bible that were not included. And he talked about the Emerald Tablets. He talked about the story of Gilgamesh. And he tied everything in perfectly to the Bible. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was getting answers to things that no pastor could give me. You know, and I felt good. I felt like I was really learning. And I would go to work, and me and my friend Rose, we would talk, and, you know, I shared this information with her. Now, mind you, some of it I feel like was a bit much for her to take in, as far as things that I started to truly believe in, which was the introduction to the Anunnaki. I think that might have been a bit much for her. It wasn't for me. But I do think it was probably a bit much for her to take in. And I was like, you know, this is wild. This is like some really wild stuff. But again, I was getting answers to questions that I've been wanting all my life. And all I could think about was how my friend Kevin Malone told me about these things, you know, when I was younger, and the way that he said it was in this what if kind of way. Some of the stuff I did actually kind of look into a little, but I didn't go far into it because I was afraid. And I was really afraid of looking into something that I shouldn't, because it was going to contradict the Bible and what I believed. And I believed at that time that I was only supposed to fill my mind with things that was only in regard to what I was learning with our church as an Adventist, that, you know, it was wrong to look into anything else. That's something that I regret. I do. Because, again, I think that we should have the freedom to be able to have insight into whatever it is that we believe. We should be able to question. You know what I'm saying? Close my energy. We should be able to question. And as much as we were told, you know, as Seventh-day Adventists, this is a intelligent religion, and we don't just blindly go along with, you know, whatever. But we had to study things in the context of things that related to Seventh-day Adventists, meaning if we were going to get information about something, our knowledge, I guess, was not supposed to go past the books that Ellen G. White had written. We were only supposed to look into those things that were a part of the church. And that, to me, still was wrong. It still was wrong. Why can't I look into anything else and, you know, bring that in? But because it's outside of the truth of the church, it's not supposed to be done. So again, there's this limit that gets put on you in terms of what's truth and how much truth you can have, or what's considered truth. I didn't like that. Because again, I felt like, you know, are you guys hiding something? Why can't I put this up against this? And if what we have is actually the truth, why are we concerned about, you know, other things? Like, it's wrong to compare or feel like, you know, we're getting something from over here or whatever. Like, it just was not viewed as being right. You're not supposed to do it. So that was another thing, you know. But when I started listening to Billy Carson's stuff, he talked about his experience. He even talked about how he went through a whole lot when it came to losing his wife and being looked at as being crazy because of the experience that he had, and how it you know, overall affected him. And I felt bad, but I believed him. I definitely believed him. I believed in everything that he talked about and he said, and how he had really looked into a lot of things himself. He had studied a lot of things himself, and he gave the information of where you could get this stuff. And I then started to look into it and saw truth in it. I saw truth in it. And for the first time again, I felt good because I did not feel like I was being misled. I felt like, wow, finally somebody has some answers for me. You know? On Google to the ancestors. I felt like somebody actually had some answers for me and really cared about me knowing the truth and not having the truth being hidden from me. Alright, I don't know how well I'm going to be able to do this. Carry everything. So get out of here. And I know this video is kind of long, y'all. But, if you watch it, you watch it. If you don't, you don't. I hope you do watch it and just listen to what I'm saying. But I feel like, darn, I don't mean to put that bright light right in y'all face. I just feel like when he started talking about, and this was actually where my point of awakening happened. All right? Just to be clear, this is where my point of awakening happened, because he talked about the Anunnaki, and when he was speaking on the Bible, what actually happened with Jesus, where he went, how he left to go to other parts in Africa to study and learn. He was studying and learning. God damn it. Hold on, y'all. This is crazy. I hope this comes out right. But he was talking about how Jesus was studying and learning, because he had gone to other parts of Africa to learn, all these things when it came to healing and your mind and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So, these are the things he was basically saying that we could do, and things, I guess, that he was trying to teach his followers or their disciples. And when Billy Carson talked about the Anunnaki, who they are and how they actually were looked at as our gods, why is it so freaking bright like that? I don't understand what's going on with my phone. Damn. Something's wrong with my phone, y'all. I'm sorry. Shit. Okay, I'm gonna just stop it here.